Today on our conversations at NOBTS, we're privileged to have Dr. Johnny Hunt. Dr. Hunt is the past president of the SBC. He's a prominent pastor in the SBC, and I think Dr. Kelly, our president, said it best about you, that historically speaking, you're one of the most evangelistic pastors in the history of the SBC. So we're glad to have you, appreciate you coming. And I'd just like to start off by asking you about probably what you're known for. When people think of Johnny Hunt, they think passion. So how, in the midst of life, life can get hard, ministry struggles, and all that we can go through in life and ministry, how do you maintain your zeal for the Lord in the midst of all of that?
You know, the question's often asked, how do you continue to live without getting over what happened? And I tell my story a lot. It's just amazing. It's sprinkled in almost every sermon that I preach somewhere, that January 7th, 1973. There's some people that know my date of getting saved, don't even know their own because I've said it so much. But I really have thought through it, and certainly devotionally, I am a very devotional believer. I had an early time to leave my home this morning, but not before being able to get on my knees and get in my Bible and read some devotional thoughts and let God speak into my heart. And it's so important. And the longer I serve the Lord, and I know this was said of Martin Luther, and I'm not where he was, because he was praying 4 hours a morning when he died. And basically, people say, how do you give 4 hours when you got so much to do? He said, no, it's just the opposite. How do I do all I've got to do without giving 4? Yeah. But I really cannot begin a good day without an hour, and I prefer an hour and a half to just really meditate in the things of God. And I'm always asked, well, does it move over into your preaching preparation? And by the grace of God, no. Now, when there are days I feel pressed on my sermon prep, there's a tendency to move away from your devotion. But I have learned, don't do that. And when I say sacrifice, if that's the proper word, and I do my devotion, without exception, God gives me something extremely significant that I weren't looking for the message. But I think it's staying close to Jesus and never moving away from witnessing, being an intentional witness. I was thinking when I came over, I text one guy, see if he can have lunch with me tomorrow, because he has great spiritual need. Then I have another one that I'm working with that's lost. So by the grace of God, I've always got men in my life that I'm trying to win to Jesus. And I've got intentional steps to do that. And so Freddie Gage taught me years ago, write names in your Bible that you pray for. And so I think passion for Jesus, passion for those who Christ died for, passion to see others become fully devoted followers of Christ, passion about God's Word, I've tried to preach intentionally, not just going to preach Sunday, but I'm anticipating. Here's where I think God's going to take our church through my whole weekend. So, yeah. And it's exciting to see that and kind of have some ways to measure what He's doing. But it's a combination. But staying in love with Jesus and staying in love with your family. I'm passionate about my wife, my children, and real passionate about the church that I serve and have been for a long time.
Yeah, amen. Well, what about maybe even more specific towards passion about evangelism? How do you continue to foster that sort of burden for souls and that desire to continually do evangelism? Is it still that connection to Jesus? Is there more?
It really is. And it's one thing, it seems like we're in a time right now where everyone wants to make sure we define the gospel right. Is that good? Absolutely. But I fear that many that are defining it so well never declare it to the ones who need to hear it. And where the gospel comes alive and its power is demonstrated, and it's the power of God unto salvation. So you can know that it's the power of God, but never know what it's unto unless you share it. But, I hang out at the racetrack, 3/8 mile dirt track on Saturday nights. The owner is like a surrogate father to me. I have carte blanche there. I go there because I'm deeply convicted that if Jesus were to come to Woodstock on Saturday, He'd go to Dixie Speedway, because that's where there's more sinners, more needy people. And so I'm intentional. Why do I go there? Do you love racing? Pretty fond of it. My wife loves it. But what do I go there for? To give out New Testaments, to give out my life story, to give out Jesus videos, And so, and to pray for the people and to pray for the drivers and to engage them. And so I've been doing it for over 20 years. So now when I enter the gates, there's normally someone waiting for me to engage me, to ask me to pray for someone. Or someone's in a hospital, and we make those hospital visits so we can connect with those families. And God's let us win a lot of people to Christ. But, you know, I'm after several people right now. And so I pray for a greater burden. Isn't it amazing? Jesus said, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he'll send forth more. I'll guarantee you the ones that he sent were the ones that were praying. So how do you pray for a burden for the lost if God gives it? So someone said to me one time, said, I can't believe I've been in prayer meetings with you and you're always praying that God give you a greater passion for him and a greater passion for souls. And they said, we don't know anybody that's more passionate about souls. And I said, well, evidently he's answering the prayer. So, but I do specifically ask, and then theologically, this was a game changer with my dad before I led my dad to Christ. It was years ago. It's not that my dad's going to be condemned. My dad's already condemned. He that believeth not is condemned already. Not that my dad one day will perish. My dad is perishing, which is a little Greek word that means being cut loose from. And so they're cut loose. In other words, he's just a moment, a heartbeat from hell. He's already condemned. He's already perishing. So I've got to get to him now. I've got to go now. So it's not like before it's everlasting too late. He's 1 second from being everlasting too late. So if we're going to do something, we've got to do it now. What do they say? It's good news only if it gets there in time. Yeah. So I still really believe that. And that's the way I lead my church. I try to lead it by example. To quote Roy Fish, and we need to do that more, because Hebrews 11:4 says, of Abel, though he's dead, yet he speaketh. I want to speak for those that have gone on, and I pray one day someone will speak when I'm gone. So my voice will continue to be here until the end of time. But Roy Fish said, evangelism's not taught, it's caught. When I can stand down front or at the baptismal pool and begin to say, hey, this is, and hey, Janet and I had the opportunity to drop by their house the other night, or better yet, take them to lunch and dinner. Manly Beasley said, don't waste your meal times. And then let me tell you how your president on this campus affected me. It was him that I was with that when we were having lunch at some godless place down here in New Orleans, just kidding, a great place, that he said, we're getting ready to bless this food, can I pray for you? And then he gave them the little card that said, thank you. And then inside it says, I have left you a generous tip, but the greatest tip I can give you is to share the good news. So I've got those, and I was looking at them, they're in my briefcase there. But that's where Chuck Kelly influenced me. Chuck and I have been soul winning before on our field. So whether you call it witnessing, soul winning, Jesus the soul winner, again, I don't want to spend my life defining it to get it right so they can say it with clarity. I want to do it. Yeah. So I'm a James believer. I'm a James practical theologian. And I don't know why James made Martin Luther so uncomfortable that he called it epistle straw and tore it out of his Bible. But he's a do-it type preacher. Yeah. He don't just hear the word, but he's to obey it, to do something with it. And so my ministry leadership, the reform that are joining our church are saying that as much as they loved the emphasis on doctrine and theology, and I want that too, I want light and heat, they miss the exhortation as to what to do with it. So that's my real burden, concern is, let's don't just get it right. Yeah. Let's do the right thing with it when we get it.
That's good stuff. You're also known as in the church revitalization. You did that in North Carolina. God's just done incredible things through you for church revitalization. I'm interested to get sort of your feedback, because you seem to have a passion for church revitalization. And just to get your feedback on the need for church revitalization. We still need to emphasize church planting, but to also emphasize church revitalization. So what's your sort of your perspective on that?
When I started leading the charge on revitalization, there were 72% of our churches plateau decline. Now, I've only been doing it a year, and it's 73%. When I say a year, to be leading in our denomination do it. We've done it in every church I've served, and we've taken over some churches and we've done it. Here's the real premise. we're big in church planting. We planted 1,000 last year, but we lost 900. We need to have a 1,500 a year gain to really have traction. So, spinning our wheels. They say this year that we'll probably lose 800. I pray it's just 800 because we've been on a trajectory of 900 a year. We lose 10,000 churches a year, all churches. There's 400,000 churches in America. But Southern Baptists are 45,000 of the 400,000, and we're losing 900. So we're losing our share, just like the other non-mainline evangelicals. Well, here's my premise. If we're planting churches, who's giving the dollars to our denomination, 50 cents on every dollar to North American Mission Board, for church planting everywhere, but in particular trying to focus on the underserved and the large mega cities of our nation? 72%. So here's my visual. These guys are faithful, and their churches are very committed to our cooperative effort to fund our IMB as well as our North American Mission Board that allows us to plant churches around the world. But I see some of them sinking, and you can hear them bubbling over there, and they're asking, as they're taking on water, hey, I want to keep helping y'all, but does anybody care that we're sinking? Now, if we can go back and strengthen the other churches that are already giving the money, now we are strong on both fronts. We're able to do more church planting because we can't do the church planting without the funding of the churches that are already there. And 72% of them, we've got to know that the vast majority of the money is coming from that 72%. I don't think that it's the 28% that are carrying this denomination. It's got to be significant. So I want to go back and help them to be healthy. Here's the good news. Never in my life have I led conferences that have the attendance that I'm doing. I was in Virginia the other day. We have 600 Southern Baptist churches. 244 of them were represented. I did Mississippi the other day. 340 churches represented. Never. I mean, they're saying in our state convention in Georgia, 376, they said it's the largest single day in the history of our state convention for training of that many different churches. I mean, State Evangelism Conference may draw 1,000, but there are 20 from this church and 30. They're not that many pastors there, 300 pastors. But so we're speaking to their need. And I think the real need is leadership. And so Southeastern Seminary and Tennessee Temple, which hopes to become a Southern Baptist school with Dr. Eccles, which was at New Orleans, leading it now. And I had the privilege of pastoring him and his family for a few years before he took one of the mission churches before going there. So I met with them yesterday. I'm meeting with them again next week. But we're realizing that we're giving great theological training on our seminaries. Our guys are leaving, and girls, with a great commission heart, but we're lacking, we believe, in pastoral leadership that's relational. And so as a result, here's what they're saying. The guys are going there, seem to be getting a lot of traction, really polished. 3 years, good number of them being fired. So what it is, and it's relational, I think. And I speak as one that's been doing it 38 years. So I think we need to help them in leadership.
So what advice would you give them as far, relationally speaking, if that is one of the key areas there?
One of the things we got to realize is that, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but you know, I am called to lead the First Baptist Church of Woodstock. But I want to lead them as a foot-washing preacher. I'm there to serve them. The greatest joy in my life will come tonight of not by what I tell somebody else to do and they do, but the privilege to not only exhort, but 4 or 5 times stronger than my exhortation, be my emulation. If you read Titus chapter 2 and verse 6, and the whole theme of Titus is raising up leaders. They're on the largest isle in the Mediterranean, the island of Crete. Paul is telling Titus how to make leaders. In verse 6, he says this. He says, teach these leaders sober-mindedness. The word that's used there puts a major emphasis on moral purity. And then he immediately changes gears. After telling them only one thing to do, to teach, he says, and then show thyself. And then he lists 6 things. I think we've got to get back to following our children. Show and tell. We tell and don't show. So, in other words, here's another one-liner. I only have about 5 one-liners that's original with me, but here's one. We're preaching messages and calling people to decisions, but there's a problem. There's no platform to accommodate their obedience. For instance, I challenge my high school students, once they graduate from high school, to give their first year overseas. Or say they respond, they come forward. I must connect those dots. I not only connect the dots, but I can get every Southern Baptist seminary, every Southern Baptist college to give those students 30 hours credit for doing it. And the North Greenville is giving me 30 hours credit and $3,000 scholarship. So, and then I've got 13 different places in the world that I can send them, either with Operation Mobilization, International Mission Board, SCORE International, Word of Life, but there's different venues. So I've created the platform that I'm calling them to respond to. So, and if we're not preaching with intentionality, we're saying the right things and the people are responding, they're filling the altars, but we don't accommodate them and they're not ready to do it. I read a paper coming over here on my church. I've just led my church through a consultant called Generous Church. When you've been there so many years, people compartmentalize their life towards you. Like I've led a lot of people to become faithful givers, but some don't even listen to me anymore. And I think, how can I reach them? So, and I've got some ideas through this. But basically, I think new believers want to give. They want to be obedient. The grace of God has filled their heart. And the grace has caused them to have a passion, desire to obey. But they can't, they're so far in debt. So I have financial people, experts, that are there to help them learn to give. But it's not enough for me just to say, you a bunch of God robbers. You need to give. You're disobedient. And they're out there and they're drowning and they're thinking, I agree, oh God, I feel terrible. But I need to lift the bar and say, and the next 4 weeks during Sunday school, you can go to a Dave Ramsey class and we have a financial expert that's going to lead it. We're going to teach you about your budget and how to get out of debt so you can begin to obey God. Only heaven knows how many people should be on this campus that God's called to vocational ministry, but debt keeps them from obeying the Lord.
That's a good word there. Well, Dr. Hunt, we appreciate your time with us. Wish we could spend all day with you, but we thank you for the time that you've given us. Most of all, thank you for your service to the Lord over these years, over your life. And we know that God will continue to use you, as you said, when after you're gone, your words will still be there, and we'll be quoting you and still carrying on your legacy.
I'm counting on it. Thank you.
Thank you.